The National Press Club in Washington, D.C. was alive with anticipation. The grand room, adorned with glittering chandeliers and bathed in the harsh glow of television cameras, buzzed with the presence of top journalists, politicians, and a diverse audience. President Donald Trump had just concluded a fiery speech on his new tariff policy, exiting the stage to thunderous applause. It was now time for White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt to take the podium and field questions. But before she could utter a word, a sharp, unexpected voice sliced through the air. It was Jen Psaki, former Biden press secretary turned MSNBC host, striding toward the microphone uninvited. Her tone dripped with sarcasm as she declared, "Let's stop pretending. We all know Caroline Leavitt isn't a real spokesperson. She's just Trump's script-reading puppet." The room froze. Every eye, journalists, politicians, camera lenses, locked onto the confrontation. A collective breath held, the silence deafening. Psaki, emboldened, smirked and pressed on. "You have no voice, Caroline. You're just parroting Trump's words, chasing a sliver of his spotlight." Leavitt stood motionless, her face an unreadable mask of calm. The crowd waited, tension coiling like a spring. Even the security team hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Then, with deliberate precision, Leavitt stepped forward. She didn't raise her voice or point an accusing finger. Instead, she spoke in a low, razor-sharp whisper that cut through the silence like a blade. "Jen, if loyalty to the truth makes me a puppet, then what are you? A storyteller for those who distort America." The room erupted in murmurs. A glass of water shattered at the back, the sound echoing in the charged atmosphere. Psaki's smirk faltered, her face stiffening. But Leavitt wasn't finished. Locking eyes with her adversary, she continued, her voice steady but resonant. "I stand beside a president who puts Americans first. You? You chase applause from a left-wing media eager to smear every value you once claimed to uphold." Each word landed like a hammer, shaking the room. Journalists scrambled to jot down notes, their pens racing across notepads. Audience members leaned forward, stunned. "You call me a puppet," Leavitt pressed on, her tone unwavering. "But you bow to fear of the media. I bow to the truth. And unlike you, I've never turned my back on the American people." Psaki's lips trembled, her composure cracking. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Scattered applause broke out, growing louder until it filled the room. Backstage, President Trump watched, giving a slight nod of approval. The war of words had escalated into a battle of principles, and Leavitt was drawing blood. Psaki, desperate to regain control, tried to retreat from the spotlight, but Leavitt wasn't done. "You want to talk about honesty, Jen?" she asked, her voice calm but cutting. "Where were you when Biden's inflation left Americans unable to buy groceries? When the media twisted the truth? When families lost their jobs? You hid behind polished speeches while real people suffered." Cameras captured every moment, live stream views surging past 2 million. Psaki's voice shook as she stammered. "You don't understand how hard it is to be press secretary." "No," Leavitt shot back, her words sharp as steel. "You don't understand what it means to stand firm." She turned to the audience, her gaze sweeping the room. "Leadership isn't chasing applause or dodging responsibility. It's choosing what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular. Something you abandoned when you sold your reputation to those who never respected you." Psaki's face paled, her confidence crumbling. Then Leavitt delivered the final blow. You were once press secretary, Jen. Now you're just a mouthpiece for those dividing America. History won't forget. The room wasn't just shocked. It felt wounded, as if a deep truth had been laid bare. Whispers spread like wildfire. Psaki stood rigid near the podium, realizing she'd walked into a storm of her own making. Leavitt stepped past her, addressing the crowd and the cameras directly. "This isn't about me," she said, her voice resolute. "The truth is, some people held the title of press secretary, but sold its soul to keep dinner invitations from the other side." Psaki's jaw clenched, her eyes darting to a group of donors in the corner. Some turned away, avoiding her gaze. A young woman in the audience, clutching a worn purse, burst into tears. She remembered losing her job during Biden's inflation crisis, while Psaki delivered polished talking points on television. Leavitt's words struck deep. "This party isn't perfect," Leavitt said, turning to the audience. "But we don't need traitors. We need warriors, and I won't let history be rewritten by someone who fled the fight." The room erupted in thunderous applause. Psaki seemed to shrink. Her presence diminished. Psaki tried one last defense, her voice trembling. "You think you know what it's like to stand in my shoes? You've never been there, Caroline. You don't know the pressure, the chaos." Leavitt cut in, her voice sharp yet composed. "I know, and I've stood firm." The room froze. Psaki raised a trembling hand, pointing at Leavitt. "You're just a newcomer leaning on Trump's name. I built my credibility." Leavitt's eyes turned icy. "The difference is, I never spat in the face of the one who gave me those shoes." Murmurs grew louder. A veteran in a worn cap stood, clapping alone at first, then joined by others. Leavitt continued, her voice steady. "You act like you carried the world, but when it mattered, you let the left-wing media write the ending. You handed them the pen." The crowd nodded in agreement. Psaki's forced smile faded, her face aging under the weight of the moment. Then Leavitt reached into her pocket, pulling out a small USB drive. Holding it up, she said, "This is a clip from your MSNBC show, where you denied Biden's inflation while millions couldn't afford food." The room gasped. A journalist in the front row stood snapping photos. Psaki's eyes widened. "That's distorted information," she shouted. Leavitt's voice remained cold. "No, it's verified. I checked. Transparency isn't betrayal, Jen. Lying with a smile is." She placed the USB on the podium. "This isn't revenge. This is the truth. Americans deserve to know who you became." Psaki bowed her head, her shoulders slumping. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, like a verdict. Backstage, Trump whispered to an aide, "She just ended Psaki's career." Whispers spread through the crowd. "She has proof." Did Psaki really say that? Why would she deny our pain? Leavitt stood still, letting the truth settle. She wasn't smug or triumphant. She looked burdened, as if carrying a weight she hadn't wanted to expose. Psaki stepped back from the microphone, her face pale. Her hand fumbled in her pocket, searching for nothing. The stage lights burned on her forehead. Some journalists, once her allies, looked down, embarrassed for the woman they'd once championed. A pastor from Ohio clasped his hands, bowing his head in quiet reflection. Leavitt cleared her throat, her eyes still on Psaki. "You call me a puppet, but puppets don't expose the truth. Traitors hide it." An elderly woman in the front row, wearing an American flag pin, wiped away tears. Psaki tried to speak, her voice cracking. This isn't fair. But Leavitt wasn't done. Turning to the audience, her gaze swept over stunned, angry, and heartbroken faces. I didn't want it to come to this, she said, her voice low but weighty. But we can't fix this country if we protect those who harm it from within. When America was besieged by media lies, you chose silence. When the people needed someone steadfast, you offered glossy statements. And when it mattered, you turned your back on the values you claimed to defend. The audience sat mesmerized. Leavitt pointed to a young man holding a family photo. "That's your sister, isn't it?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "She lost her job because of Biden's inflation, while people like Jen Psaki covered up the truth. That's why I can't stay silent." Applause broke out, growing louder until the entire room stood in ovation. Psaki glanced at the exit, looking like someone drowning in a storm she thought she could control. The back door opened. President Trump appeared, walking slowly down the center aisle, his face expressionless. Cameras swiveled. The crowd stirred. Psaki tensed, her shoulders stiffening. Leavitt gave Trump a slight nod and stepped back deferentially. Trump took the podium, scanning the room before glancing at Psaki. "You know," he said, his voice steady, "I was watching backstage, and I've never been prouder of a press secretary than I am right now." Leavitt's face showed no pride, only resolve. Trump placed a hand on her shoulder. "Loyalty isn't blind obedience. It's standing up for what's right, even when it's ugly, even when it hurts." Then Trump turned to Psaki. "I once trusted you, Jen, but you broke that trust. The worst part? You didn't just let me down. You let down all of America." Psaki looked away, unable to meet his gaze. Trump continued, "You called Caroline a puppet, but today she exposed you without even touching you." The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others cried. The room now belonged to Caroline Leavitt. Every major network interrupted programming to broadcast the moment live. Social media exploded, with live stream views skyrocketing. Psaki stood blinking rapidly, as if wishing to rewind time, but the cameras didn't spare her. Leavitt spoke again, her voice echoing through the live stream. "America isn't perfect. We've been hurt, deceived. But nothing stings more than betrayal from those who were once allies." She didn't look at Psaki. When someone chooses applause from enemies over loyalty to the truth, they become smaller than their own shadow. An elderly woman, leaning on a cane, was helped forward by her son. Leavitt recognized her and paused, her voice gentle. "Do you want to say something?" The woman gripped the microphone, her voice trembling but firm. "I worked 3 shifts a day to feed my family under Biden. I didn't lose hope until Jen Psaki went on TV, denying the struggles we faced." Murmurs rose. She pointed at Psaki. "You talked about transparency, but when the media attacked, you chose their side." Psaki couldn't meet her eyes. The woman turned to Leavitt. "You remind me of something I thought was lost. Honesty." Leavitt blinked, hiding her emotion. The woman's son whispered, "That's enough, Mom." Leavitt returned to the podium. "America doesn't demand perfect leaders. It's begging for honest ones." Even Psaki's former allies in the front row bowed their heads. What began as a political event had become a national reckoning. Psaki, always calculated and polished, crumbled under the weight of Leavitt's truth and the audience's pain. "I tried to do what I thought was right," she muttered. Leavitt cut in gently but firmly. "Didn't mean to what, Jen? Sell out the truth? Hurt those who trusted you? Let the media define you?" Psaki's voice shook. I thought Trump couldn't succeed. I didn't want to go down with him. The room fell silent. Leavitt stepped closer, looking her in the eye. And that's why you don't belong here. Psaki's lips trembled. She glanced at Trump, meeting only a cold stare. The audience began to turn away, some literally turning their backs. Leavitt didn't gloat. She bowed her head and whispered into the microphone, "Cowards run from the fire. Leaders walk through it." Outside, news vans lined up, reporters speaking frantically as headlines flashed nationwide. Psaki exposed by Leavitt in shocking confrontation. Trump backs Leavitt in stunning moment. Leavitt sat beside Trump as Psaki faded into the shadows. A reporter shouted, "Miss Leavitt, should Psaki be ousted from the media?" Leavitt's voice was firm but respectful. "I believe in accountability, not from the left, but from within. We don't lose because of lies from opponents, but because of silent betrayals cloaked in civility. This isn't punishment. It's protecting the truth so we don't lose the soul of the conservative movement." Psaki sat down, shattered, as Leavitt's name rose like a storm. Backstage, an aide handed Leavitt a folded letter. "From your husband," the aide whispered. Leavitt stepped into a quiet corner, her hands trembling as she opened it. "Caroline, I watched you today. I've never cried so much. Not because you're strong, but because you're sincere, even when it hurts. That's true leadership. I wasn't always strong enough to stand by you from the start, but today, you're the woman I always hoped you'd become. You didn't destroy Psaki. You exposed her with truth. I'm proud of you. Nicholas." Leavitt wiped a tear, tucking the letter away. Behind every speech was a young mother, a girl who once needed a reason to believe. During a break, Leavitt's phone buzzed with a private call. "Caroline Leavitt," she answered. A trembling voice came through. "You don't know me, but I lost my job last year because of inflation. I used to believe Psaki on MSNBC. Leavitt's heart tightened. "I'm so sorry." The woman continued, choking back tears. "Today I felt someone stood up for us." Leavitt closed her eyes. "My mother said there are two kinds of leaders, those who talk and those who lead through the fire. You led us today." Leavitt's voice was soft. "I promise I won't stop." The event resumed, cameras rolling. Psaki rose from her seat, but no one clapped. She walked down the aisle like a ghost, pausing at the exit, hoping for a whisper of support. None came. Regret hit like a storm as she stepped into the cold air, the door closing behind her. Leavitt remained near the stage, composed, listening to the crowd. An older man in a worker's cap approached, his jacket bearing a Union pin. "You spoke for us today," he said, his voice trembling. "I've waited years for truth like that." Leavitt gripped his hand. "Thank you for your service, sir." He shook his head. "No, young lady. Thank you for serving us." Later, Trump sat beside Leavitt, handing her a glass of water. "Today, you didn't just defend me. You defended something bigger." Leavitt nodded. "I just told the truth." Trump smiled faintly. "Truth has a cost. You paid it today." Leavitt met his eyes. "It was worth it." Trump leaned in. "They love you now, but don't let that change you. Stay the person who cried over a stranger's call." Leavitt replied, "I'm here so no child feels forgotten." Trump nodded. "That's why you'll go further than them all." As Leavitt left in a black SUV, Washington's streets glowed under street lights. Her aide, Sarah, glanced back. "Want to see the headlines?" Leavitt shook her head, pulling out her husband's letter. The driver spoke softly. "Ma'am, you did."
Something unforgettable tonight. Leavitt gazed out the window. I didn't come to be remembered. I came to help people remember who they are. She clutched a creased note from her mother. Always tell the truth. Tonight, it meant everything. By midnight, Caroline Leavitt's inbox overflowed with messages from workers, teachers, and mothers. A teenager from Ohio wrote, "Miss Leavitt, my mom lost her job. You fought for us. Please don't stop." Leavitt read it aloud, her team in tears. This was a movement. At 1:34 a.m. in a prayer room, Leavitt prayed, "God, keep me honest." Trump joined her. "They're ready?" he asked. "They're starving for truth," she replied. They left as warriors for a forgotten America. Next morning, Leavitt told journalist Emily Harper, "Psaki called me a puppet, but I was sad for her bitterness. I said, 'You sold your soul to those who despise your values.'" Social media erupted. "You changed the conservative movement," Harper said. "No, reminded," Leavitt replied. At home, her son Nico asked, "Why did that lady say you're bad?" Leavitt smiled. "Real strength speaks truth quietly." Nico hugged her. "You're my superhero." Psaki, alone in a hotel, faced regret. Her advisor said, "You're the past." The people chose Leavitt. In a classroom, teacher Linda Carter played Leavitt's speech. A girl said, "She cares about us." A boy added, "She told the truth." Leavitt was hope. In the Oval Office, Trump told Leavitt, "This fight is for America's soul." She nodded. "They need honesty." A letter from Emma 10 read, "You reminded Mom who we are. You're a warrior." Leavitt cried, fighting for forgotten voices. Psaki faded, her interviews canceled. In a diner, she sat alone, regret heavy. Leavitt's calm truth had won. In a national address, Trump said, "This is a movement, led by Leavitt." She turned off the teleprompter. "America wants courage, not lies. I'd rather be a puppet for truth than a master of betrayal." The nation cheered, trust reborn. Leavitt's fire was just beginning.